IALLT. We also have Adolfo Carrillo Cabello here and Evan Rubin, who are also webinar coordinators for IALLT. So if you have any problems during the webinar, what you can do is to privately chat to one of us and we'll do our best to help you. IALLT is the International Association for Language Learning Technology. You can find more information at IALLT.org. We offer webinars about once a month, and anyone is welcome to come to our webinars. And then we have webinar recordings as a member benefit. Although our webinars that have been on the topic of related to COVID-19, we have had open, and those are located at fltmag.com, which is our online magazine. And so you might want to check out our online magazine. It's got some webinar recordings from the past and also a lot of articles that are relevant to topics related to what we're talking about today. We hope you'll consider becoming a member of IALLT because this is the way that we are able to offer services like the webinars as well as other things like our FLT Mag, and also we have an LLTI listserv, and you can find more information about that on our website. For the webinar, we ask that you keep your microphone muted. That cuts down on background noise. If there's a time in the presentation that you can unmute your mic, we'll let you know. If you have questions or comments during the presentation, you can type them in the chat. To open the chat box, you should hover over your Zoom screen and click chat. And we're welcome to have any kinds of conversations in the chat. If you want to get out of full screen view, you can hit escape. I wanted to especially thank our presenters today. Our topic today is online, hybrid, Hyflex, and high stress, preparing for fall 2020. I really want to thank them because this is a difficult topic, and I think none of us are experts in everything that we're facing this fall. And so we really appreciate that they are willing to share their experience and their expertise in this area. But of course, none of us are experts at this point in everything that's going on. Our format today is going to be that we're going to hear from each of our presenters for a few minutes. And then what I've done is I've compiled a lot of the questions that came in through the registration form into a Q&A section. I don't think we'll have time for all of the questions, and so I'm going to let the presenters choose which ones they respond to, and I've kind of consolidated them into popular questions that were asked. And then at the very end, maybe just 10 minutes or so until the end, we're going to break you up into discussion rooms of about 10 or so people so that you can talk to some of your colleagues about what their plans are for the fall, what challenges they are facing, and what some of their solutions are for what's facing us this fall. So thank you so much, Kevin Gogler, Florencia Henshaw, and Noah McLaughlin, for being willing to spend time, especially because they were on vacation this week and last week, and they did this at relatively short notice. So thank you so much for being willing to do this for us today and start the conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Florencia, Kevin, and Noah.
Hi, everybody. We were just trying to figure out who's controlling the screen and, you know, all of the logistics of doing a panel presentation when you're working with more than one person. For now, I'm going to be sharing my screen, and then at some point, Noah wants to share his screen, so hopefully that can be sorted out. So thank you, Shannon, for this opportunity and for the introduction. We have a lot to discuss, so we'll jump right in. Our plan for today, we're going to talk just for about 5 minutes each. We'll keep it very short, just our own experience last spring and what we're planning on doing for fall very briefly. And then we'll do some Q&A based on the questions that you submitted when you registered. But if you have extra questions, you can always, type them up in the chat room. And there's also time to discuss later in the discussion rooms as well. So we are going to start with Kevin. Kevin, are you there?
I'm right here. Yeah,
All
thank you.
So just let me know when you need me to go to the next slide. I think that'd be the easiest way.
Okay, so you know, I wear a couple of hats at Marist, and one of my hats is I'm the interim assistant dean of the School of Liberal Arts. I'm also an associate professor of Spanish, and I was, as some of you know, computer assisted language learning has been my focus for many years, and it turns out that our expertise seems to be pretty useful in this crisis. Um, One of the things that happened in the spring at our college is you know, I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences where we were caught a bit flat-footed with how to gear up very quickly and train a large number of faculty members to really be as prepared as possible for the remote emergency teaching that we've been doing. And many, you know, there really wasn't the infrastructure in place. So a lot of what I had been involved with is uh, creating a lot of webinars for faculty, pointing them in the right direction for
It's okay.
different
Don't.
kinds of resources and the like. The result of that was me being appointed to this academic planning committee for the fall, because they, you know, trying to get others to come up with really what is the baseline that faculty will need to be able to master to pull this off in a much more coordinated way in the fall. And so what we came up with, you can see this document just kind of outlines what we passed along to our faculty. We're working in a hybrid format, and we can kind of talk about what that means. We came up with our own terms since there really weren't any in the literature out there, but we basically said everyone had to be ready to go fully online at any time. We use Sakai. Our flavor of Sakai is called iLearn. So you can see that, you know, we had a robust iLearn site was required of every faculty member. And then in terms of the way their course was going to be set up, that hybrid model could be, and we called it a couple of different things, a blended synchronous, which is really a simulcast structure in which, you know, the faculty member is coordinating with half the students online and half on the ground in front of them. Some faculty were advocating for this, I think, seemingly thinking that it was easier. I was not the one who advocated most for that one, because it really supports a lecture kind of format, which wouldn't work for a lot of our language classes. So I was pushing for the green square, which is really flexible hybrid, more close to the Hyflex model that many of us have been researching, in which you reduce your class in maybe half, maybe more. You meet half one meeting, half another meeting, and your lectures all get pushed online. Lots of materials get pushed online, and you're using that precious on the ground time for active learning, whatever that means, trying to pair students up 6 feet apart and with masks on. And we could talk about the challenges of that. So how do you train people to do this in a very short period of time? If you want to go to the next slide, Florencia. I'm trying to be very brief here in my introduction, so I'm sorry if I'm glossing over things. What I created on the fly in the spring, and kind of towards the tail end of the spring, I'm going to put it in the chat room for you guys, this link. I called it the cookbook, creating this metaphor for faculty, thinking that there's a recipe for this, but like any recipe, we need to play with the ingredients based on what we have available to us. And so I created this website that I sent you a link to called the cookbook. Our digital education office kind of ran with it, and we blew it out into a much more robust certificate program in hybrid instruction. It's self-paced, and there are 5 modules that faculty walk through in that particular model. We're calling it hybrid instruction with a twist of lemon, since hybrid instruction is, the faculty member of the institution controls what's online and what's on the ground. Hyflex, the student really chooses what's online and what's on the ground. And this is a case where we have a virus choosing what's online and what's on the ground. So we didn't quite know what to call it. So we're calling it hybrid with a twist, or hybrid with a twist of lemon, just to be a little bit playful. The goal of this in support is really to get faculty to create a course map, which maps their learning goals to their assessments and lets them think about what kinds of activities work in between the goal and the assessment to get the student, to get the learner to reach that goal. And what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm actually going to upload to the chat that document. So it's a blank template that you're welcome to check out and use. But in a few minutes, when it's not my turn, I'll find the file and stick it up in the chat room. You want to just go to the last slide of mine, and then it'll basically look like this. You'll get a full blown out Excel sheet of this. And if you can just kind of picture, it's color coded, and our training module basically walks a faculty member through each one of those color areas and says, okay, break your course into particular learning objectives. Then think about how will you assess that particular learning objective, right? And then what do activities look like on the ground? What do they look like online? And the reason why we did it that way is because, even if a student starts in one lane, they can move to a different lane, right? They get tested and become positive, and even if they're not showing symptoms, they're out of your class for 14 days, even if you intended them to be on the ground. Same thing could happen to you as the instructor. So your class has to be ready to go online at any particular moment. How do you do that? What we did was we tried to just push faculty away from the idea that learning has to take shape in a course set, in 50 minutes or 75 minutes. Just like we all thought, songs had to be coupled with an album. Your class learning doesn't have to be coupled to a 50 or 75-minute session. Take that idea out, break it into learning objectives. Those learning objectives could happen over a week or 2 weeks, right? And then think about what that project or assessment might look like. So really the template is just a way to guide someone through rethinking everything before they even get to the syllabus. This isn't even something a student has to see. It's just a roadmap for rethinking your class. So I could go on, but I promised to be brief in this particular part, so I'm going to be brief and pass it along. I think Florencia is going next, right? And then and I will upload that file for you guys momentarily.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Florencia Henshaw. I am at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I am the director of Advanced Spanish, which means that I also wear a lot of hats. Maybe not as many as Kevin, I don't know. But I supervise 4 courses, although I would say 4.5, because one of the courses has 2 versions, one that is hybrid for second language learners, one that is online for heritage speakers. So these courses are 5th, 6th semester. They're usually the ones that Spanish majors and minors take as they are embarking on the major or the minor. I teach other courses that are different from those that I supervise. So I have to get essentially 6 courses ready every semester. The other courses that I teach tend to be upper level linguistics courses or the grad course on language teaching that I teach in the fall. I'm going to share my site there because that's where I have a lot of, the slides from recent webinars, tech tools, resources for Spanish in the US. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about all of that, but I'll let you go and explore go.illinois.edu/TLTL. So I'll give you a quick snapshot of Spanish at UIUC, what it looks like. Many of our courses have been hybrid for a long time. The way we do hybrid is by replacing some of the contact hours with online coursework. All of the hybrid courses that you see there, so all of the 100 levels, 200, 204, 228, and 252, they only meet twice a week. I don't know about 252, don't quote me on that one. But all of the other ones, they only meet 2 hours a week, and then the rest is done online asynchronously. So we already had a big, a robust site, as Kevin said, because a lot of the material was already online since we're hybrid. We also have 12 online courses. The ones that you see in purple, 8 of those 8 purple ones, those are the ones that I have designed or redesigned. So it ranged a little bit from 100 levels, so the beginner students, to upper level linguistics bilingualism. I teach one of the online courses every winter, and winter tends to be 3.5 to 4 weeks, so it's very intense. And that's usually either third semester or fourth semester Spanish, the one that the students take to fulfill the requirement. And it is fully online. The students are, you know, it's winter, this is over Christmas and New Year's, right? So the students are busy with many other things. So there are other constraints that we need to be thinking about. And I also supervise the summer online courses, 8 of them. So the ones from 1:30, so from number 3 to number 12, except the syntax one, although I'll be supervising that one next summer. That one's a new one. So I do a little bit of the teaching. I have done some of the development, and I also do the helping the TAs, because these courses are taught by TAs. So I think having all of this experience and having some sites already developed and some material already fully online, I think it sort of gave us an advantage in our transition to remote instruction in spring 2020. I would say the transition, as you know, perhaps nerve-wracking as it was, mainly because of the situation in the world, the transition in itself, I found it to be fairly smooth. I didn't have any crises. I didn't have to rethink everything, right? We had 1 week, we had spring break. And so for us, at least for me, it was more than enough. All I did was to keep it as simple as possible. I involved my TAs in decision-making because they're the ones teaching. So for me to go in and just change the course entirely wouldn't be right. I wanted to give them options and see what they would feel most comfortable with. So for example, I asked them, would you like to meet with half of the class or all of the class, right? We could figure things out and split in students into small groups. They say they wanted to meet with all of the class and do breakout rooms. Great, that's what we did. Are you okay with oral interviews in lieu of proctor exams? They said okay, and that's what we did. I also gave them lots of freedom to modify the activities as they found to be the best for the online environment. Some of the TAs were having issues with the breakout rooms. I found them to be a little bit glitchy as well. Maybe it's just us. But some students would end up in the wrong room. Some students said they couldn't hear anybody. So I told the TAs, just don't worry about the breakout rooms. Think about maybe changing them to be whole class activities, right? And some of them did that. But it was always about what they felt comfortable doing. I never imposed how to teach under those circumstances. I felt that that would have been wrong to do. I communicated with the students early and often. I didn't leave that up to the TAs, right? So I would send the emails to the students as soon as we heard that we were going remotely, just to reassure them that everything was gonna be fine. I made it very clear what still counted, what things maybe had been changed. And I made some very, very small adjustments. For the most part, we kept the courses as they were. So let's say students were supposed to have a quiz in class one day. I just changed it to a take-home quiz where maybe the questions were just a little bit different, but it would still do the same day. So we kept the calendar as similar as we could possibly keep it. If, let's say, it was an in-class writing assignment, we just told them to write it at home, submit it, but it was still the same due date. So we try to keep everything the same. Small adjustments. Group projects was the one that perhaps we made the most adjustments. In one particular course, the students were scheduled to present right after spring break. We felt that was not right to do that to the students, so we simply just rescheduled the group presentations, but that's fairly small and the students appreciated it. And then in the courses that I taught, I experimented with one course. I did live group presentation, and the other course I did recorded presentations. And then I saw what the students commented after the semester, and believe it or not, the ones that did the live presentations liked it a lot better than the ones that did the recorded presentations. I mean, no major complaints, but one student said that, since I know that he was enrolled in 2 of the classes, he said that they prefer just to watch their classmates present live as opposed to watch a recorded presentation. And I would say that probably the keys to success, in addition to the fact that we were already fairly equipped in the sense of teaching online and having online materials, but empathy, right? So understanding what the students are going through and letting them vent about it and reassuring them that we're here to help them and everything's going to be okay. And also being flexible with deadlines, flexible with students having technical issues, right? Helping them out as much as we could, finding alternative assignments if we could, and simplicities, right? So that was not the time to be experimenting with new tools. That was not the time to be changing assignments radically. It was all about keeping it as simple as possible. So the students would just know that the only change basically was they would be meeting in Zoom versus meeting in a classroom. For fall 2020, we are going to be teaching all online. For the courses that I supervise, I plan to keep the same contact hours, which is 2 hours a week. Some of the activities will need to be modified. For example, one of the activities that will definitely need to change are the ones where the students watch videos in class. And that is because Zoom allows for that, but depending on the students' bandwidth, that may or may not work very well. And I feel like it's probably better to let the students watch it at home, and they can rewatch, they can watch slowly, right? Whatever they need to do, and simply maybe reduce the class time that particular day by 10 minutes or however long the video was. Whoa, somebody's writing on my screen. I don't know if anybody else is seeing that. Oh, here we go, thank you. And the other activities for the most part stay the same, except for activities if they have to go around the room and talk to many classmates. I don't know that we have too many like that, but those will simply need to be modified, where the students are put into larger groups and then the students take turns asking their questions, right? Something like that. But that's a modification that goes to the TA, right? In the notes for instructors, I will simply say how some of those activities need to be changed a little bit. For the courses I teach, I will reduce the contact hours. So one of the courses I teach is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I'm going to reduce it to just Wednesday, Friday is the synchronous sessions. And on Mondays, I'm going to give them assignments that they need to complete in order to come to class prepared. I did that at the end of spring, and it worked very well, because then the Wednesday, Friday sessions were fabulous. Everybody was ready to share. Everybody was ready to talk. So I would much rather have 2 hours that you know, students talk a lot and they go great, as opposed to nobody's prepared, right? And everything kind of goes slow and you have a lot of awkward silences. So I'm happy keeping that. I plan to do some assignments with VoiceThread, and I do plan of using Perusal for the graduate course, and probably also some VoiceThread for the graduate course too. In terms of assessment, that is the one component that will be changing the most. all of them in general do a lot of take-home exams and projects, so of course those can stay. But the advanced grammar course had several quizzes in class that were proctored, as well as exams that were proctored. And so keeping it the same would have been a little bit silly, because of course the students are just going to go ahead and look up the answer. So I'm going to be changing them where they're editing tasks, and every time they edit something, they have to explain why. Could they still cheat doing that? Of course, but you know, I'm not gonna, I can't control everybody, right? They're there to learn. That's my premise. And also I'm going to be doing oral interviews, midterm and final, instead of exams. We tried them at the end of last spring and they worked very well. I think the students like them better. To be able to have a small conversation with their instructor as opposed to written final exam. I think that's all I have, and this is Noah's turn. Noah, do you want to share your screen?
Yes, indeed, Anna.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing mine, and it's all you.
So, greetings, everyone. Can somebody confirm you can see the screen that I'm sharing with y'all?
Yep.
All right, good, excellent. So things are working great. So thank you, everybody. I just noticed we have 171 participants. That's really amazing. So thank you, everybody, for your time, for being here. What I want to talk about is kind of a realization that I had with the transition last semester. The basic principle of Hyflex design is simple to comprehend and really challenging to execute. You know, creating equivalent activities that address learning outcomes in either in-person or online formats, or preferably in both. My experience this past spring gave me an insight about applying Hyflex-like approaches with the realization that it's easier to craft in face-to-face activities, in-person activities that imitate effective online activities rather than the other way around. So I want to give you a little bit of context about like where I'm from, the decisions that I made this past spring. I'm an assistant professor of French at Kennesaw State University, where I direct the Foreign Language Resource Collection and I coordinate Kennesaw State's Critical Languages program, which includes our curriculum in Arabic, Hebrew, and Russian. So just like everybody, I wear a lot of hats. That's like half of them. I teach a 2-2 load. I'm really fortunate that I only have 2 courses a semester at a 36,000 student public R2 institution just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Our department and our program emphasizes academic freedom. So we share a common textbook and some syllabus elements, but otherwise each individual instructor is given a very free hand in the way in which we design and even assess our courses. I've been teaching online since 2015, just after I became Equality Matters certified. And I've presented these methods I'm going to be talking to you about a little bit in various international forums and even symposia, that's the word. It's important to note at Kennesaw State, the expectation for all online courses is that they are asynchronous. That kind of flexibility is what students expect when we say it's an online course. This is relatively different than some other places. So I think it's important to say that when I talk about the decisions I made and the experience that I had. So last spring, I taught a French 1 course and a senior seminar capstone. The cognitive whiplash between teaching ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, the bonjour and au revoir, compared to intensive discussions about transtextuality in French cinema was pretty considerable. It was totally enjoyable. And both courses, I was very fortunate, were face-to-face, and they were both relatively small. I had 16 students in my French 1 class and 8 students in my senior seminar capstone. So mid-March, more than a week before campuses closed, we were relatively fortunate that our college deans all required the faculty to articulate how we might translate our courses into an online format. So the official announcement was made about a week later on a Thursday, and many of the faculty then canceled their Friday meetings, took the weekend, and then took an official 2 days off given to us by our administration to translate all of our courses, at least the very first next kind of chunk, into an online remote teaching format. So translating for me, senior seminar was relatively easy. Again, I was pretty fortunate. I already had one student who was teleconferencing, like she was away in North Carolina because her husband had been deployed in the armed services. And over the course of the semester, if another student also had to be home or had to do something else and couldn't make it onto campus, they tended to take advantage of the fact that we could have at least one person, sometimes multiple people, attending virtually. So we took our class took place in a kind of conference room, and the kind of idea of teleconferencing and making presentations in both in-person and online formats was just our normal for a senior seminar. Now, French 1 was another kettle of fish. It was facilitated, however, by the fact that I had based that face-to-face course on my online teaching curriculum, what I had already been doing for 4 some odd years at that point. So in all of my courses, I really focus on proficiency-driven activities, mostly with integrated performance assessment or IPA-like curriculum. So in my online courses especially, I don't try to mimic activities that are effective in a face-to-face format. Rather, I address student learning with authentic texts and tasks and activities that encompass all 3 modes of language. And all of these are done in ways that are appropriate to virtual interaction. So I don't try and kind of copy and reproduce what we can do in a face-to-face format. I find ways that that works with similar modes online. So to address fundamentals, first of all, I'm really fortunate that we have Vista Higher Learning Super Site. So we use VHL's Espace textbook. I build upon those activities, however, with an online discussion forum. And also that online discussion, I encourage and almost require often some kind of multimedia responses. So my students don't just go, yes, I really like pizza too, but rather they have to tell me about their favorite kind of pizza and show us pictures and tell us where they can possibly order it and tell us a story about how they first encountered it, along with perhaps like a video of their favorite pizza place. I also create a voice thread that connects phonetics through a cultural reading from the textbook with cultural perspectives. So interpretive mode activities use my learning management system. We use Desire to Learn Brightspace. I use its quiz feature to create a kind of auto-correcting worksheet. And so these virtual worksheets really emphasize multiple passes with the IPA approach, or if it's a video, I use Kate Pisani's multiliteracies approach to kind of build comprehension. And at the end of that quiz, quote unquote, I always provide the students with all of the correct answers because in an IPA format, it's really important that they understand this basic authentic text because the next following activities are built upon their understanding of it. So interpersonal mode activities, I kind of use 2 different possibilities. Either it's voice thread for creating virtual conversations, something that's very OPIC similar, or I use SuperSite's video chat function to record a peer-to-peer role play. You can do the same thing either with Flipgrid for virtual conversations or even Seesaw, or using just recorded Zoom interactions. I've done that before. Students will Skype or Zoom each other and do the role play. No matter the application that I use, I always prepare students with a really clear situation that's articulated to them, the roles that they're going to adopt, the objectives that they have for this conversation. And I often give them a worksheet to help them identify key fundamentals that will be useful. So for presentational mode activities, I use Adobe Spark. I love it, spark.adobe.com. Go check it out if you don't already know it. Students are prepared for these activities with a similar metacognitive worksheet. And Spark allows them to create really impressive web pages, online posters, videos that they can all share with each other, that I have them share with each other in discussion forums. So this is kind of always published to the group, kind of helping to build some sort of community. So at the beginning of the spring semester, I had taken all these basics from my online course design and I had applied them to my face-to-face course. It all proved really quite easy and quite effective as well. So assignments from the online workbook didn't change. This was all homework that was assigned. I run with a kind of flipped classroom model. So they completed those before they came to class on every Monday. Discussion forums became a sort of in-class discussion, kind of a bell ringer activity on the first day, easily replicable on Zoom or your teleconferencing modality of choice. The phonetics and culture voice threads became a kind of in-class lecture where I led them dialogically to work on phonetics. I paired that with a worksheet that helped them to interpret the cultural reading from the textbook. And then we had a discussion in French 1001, it was often in English, about cultural products, practices, and perspectives. The interpretive mode thing was relatively unchanged except for the way in which it was delivered to the students. I used the same kind of activities, but instead of using my learning management system's quiz feature, I just put it on a Word document and passed that out. We worked on that together. Interpersonal activities were done in real time in class, like you do. Though again, I gave them a worksheet often to help them kind of prepare and set up for it. Sometimes for homework, sometimes we worked on it together, depending on time limitations. And then for presentational mode activities, there was no change. I had always assigned this and continued to assign these kinds of activities as homework because they were working on a website, building web pages and videos on their own. But again, provided them with a kind of metacognitive worksheet to help them prepare to present this kind of information. So what did I learn from all this stuff? My experience translating kind of back my 1001 course into an online format led me to a couple of important things. First and foremost, design from the bottleneck. Okay, it's a lot easier to find a kind of face-to-face equivalent of an effective online activity than it is to try and find some sort of online amalgam or similar activity to something that always works really well face-to-face. Also, being modular and being deliberate is very useful, right? If you plan a face-to-face course in the same kind of thinking ahead, really kind of connective but modular way in which you plan your online one, it really improves everything. It gives you a greater sense of coherence, and it really helps with the perhaps inevitable transition from face-to-face into online formats or flipping back and forth in between them. Creating clear expectations and setting clear expectations is essential. Basically, provide students with module objectives, with essential questions, model output for them as much as possible, and make your instructions like super clear, like you're trying to explain this to a 3-year-old clear. And also make your rubrics available and refer to them often. Be like, this is the thing I'm expecting you to do. Here's a rubric, here's how you're gonna be scored. They will rise to meet those expectations when you make them super clear. Finally, creating a sense of community is really important. And engaging students in a way that kind of brings them into the classroom or into the online environment is really important. So creating an instructor presence with videos and audio recordings of you is really, really effective. Encouraging students to interact in peer-to-peer ways is always very effective, or I've found it to be very useful. Whether or not they're kind of face-to-face or in person, if they have a chance to get onto a discussion forum or to share in some sort of social media platform, that brings them together and obliges them to have a little bit of interpersonal contact, which in many courses I have found really blooms. Like they love to have that ability to share and work with each other. Featuring authentic texts and tasks is a really great way to engage your students. If you want them to have buy-in, this is the way to do it. Like, give them a menu and have them figure out what they're going to order. Give them a map and figure out how they're going to use the metro to get from point A to point B. Connecting between course materials and the assessment and the real world really kind of engages them a great deal. Finally, context is really key. I think it was really important for me to establish my own context of how I made my decisions. Your context might be really different. Senior seminar was easy for me to transition because class size was small. Class time was spent doing kind of discussion and presentations that can easily be done over Skype or Zoom. But many intermediate and introductory language courses have much different needs. So it's really essential for you to kind of analyze your learning objectives and the tools that you have at hand for you to be able to design these things that are going to be effective. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I've got.
Thanks very much, Noah. There are a couple of questions for you. Then after that, we can move to the questions that I've put on our Google Slides, so that these were ones that came in before the webinar, and I tried to compile them with popular questions. But a couple of questions to you, Noah, right now is, are your D2L quizzes to build comprehension for a completion grade only?
Actually, I make them count in my online courses, like their score counts just as it is. I've toyed with making them completion only, but I've found students put forth more effort if they know it's going to be for a grade. Now, I'll caveat this with, if I see that there's some sort of systemic error or if something kind of goes wrong with the technicality of itself, I do not hesitate to kind of curve that. Be like, hey, everybody missed this one because this question was completely unclear. Fine, whatever, you all get credit for it. So it's for credit, it's not just completion, but they also do get all of the questions. They only get one attempt.
All right. Someone asked, could you explain why you assign interpretive work outside the class? In my understanding, interpretive work is embedded in literacy. I wonder how students can achieve it alone.
They can achieve it alone when you kind of consistently come back to the same sort of methodology. So I use an IPA sort of, and students take some time to learn how to do this. So I use a method that has them look at kind of the larger genre, like, is this an interview? Is this a video? Is this an advertisement? And then it has them identify some key vocabulary, and then it has them identify important ideas, and then a main idea, some kind of organizing principles, and finally some sort of cultural perspectives. But I encourage them to look at the text and then look at it again, and then look at it again, and then look at it again. This is facilitated, of course, in a face-to-face environment in which I kind of literally tell my students right there, okay, look over this text, and we wait 3 minutes. Okay, look at it again, and we wait a couple minutes. In an online environment, I give them explicit instructions about that and even model it in a little kind of video beforehand. But I found it actually to be really quite effective. It's something the students online initially struggle with. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, because we do one every single week, they really get the hang of it, and their scores improve and improve and improve and improve. It's really gratifying to see, because it's something that they're like, oh, I don't know. And then by the end of the course, they're like, yeah, I got this thing. I know what Professor McLaughlin is looking for.
And then if you get a chance, could you put in the chat just the names of some of the different tools that you were talking about? Some of them we caught and we put in the chat, but we may have missed some. So if you have the opportunity.
Yeah, I'll give you hyperlinks even.
Florencia, I know you had one more question that you wanted to answer. Could you remind us what the question was? And then
yes. Yeah, I'll read it right now. It says, a question for single presenter. Can you please talk about how you designed the activities that students had to complete before joining your synchronous sessions? So I'm guessing that has to do with the one where I said, like, Monday they do preparation and then Wednesday, Friday is the synchronous session. So for that, but also for any of the other courses, we do this in the summer a lot because the students only meet once a week. So we want to make the most out of that 1 hour that we have with them. So a lot of our activities have like a step 1, you need to do this. And then step 2, now talk to a classmate. So a lot of that, then the step 1 would be done at home, and they would come prepared for the step 2 to be ready to interview their classmate or to talk with their classmate. In the case of the course that I taught, which doesn't have a traditional textbook, this is more of a content course, then what I did was I sent them questions ahead of time that they had to answer. I would tell them, go to this site, look at this blog post, answer these questions, watch this video, and answer these questions. So everybody had already done a lot of the material and the thinking and all of that at home. So when we were in class, everybody was ready to participate because they didn't need that extra time to be like, oh, I don't know, she's asking me the question, I'm not sure, hang on, I don't want to say the wrong thing. So just giving them that extra time to prepare ahead of time, and then in class they could get into small groups and double check their answers, and then we can all share. It just goes a little bit faster than for them to see everything cold. That doesn't mean that I would tell them everything I was going to ask them, but a lot of the topics, a lot of the bigger questions they had ahead of time. So they were very much already mentally prepared for whatever it was that we were going to be discussing.
Excellent, thanks. Florencia, are you willing to share your screen again, and then
Yeah.
we can take a look at the questions? And just as a note, I can tell that we're already going to go all the way to 4 o'clock with these questions, and we're probably not going to get to all of them. So I am going to let the presenters choose which ones they want to answer. And then my plan is that at 4 o'clock, we will put people into breakout rooms. So whoever is not interested in participating in smaller discussions, then, or if you have to go at 4 o'clock, then you don't have to participate in that. But we'll go right up to 4 o'clock with questions. And then if you would like to stay later, I'm willing to stay later to host those discussion rooms. So that's the plan. So we have about 15 minutes for some questions, but like I said, I don't think we will get to them all. We have 4 screens worth that came in beforehand. But so presenters, I think maybe we can go in order, and Kevin, you can choose one to answer, and then Florencia, and then Noah.
Okay. Kevin?
Maybe Kevin's already on vacation. I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't begrudge him of it at all, actually.
Maybe
no. I can go for, if you need extra time to think about it, I can say something.
Okay, Florencia, go ahead.
So I think the first one just goes back to what I said before, right? So I understand that some students shy away from speaking, and I think that actually the online format is better suited for those students. I feel like they're a lot more shy in class where you're in front of 20 students and you have no way out. But at least online, to me, there's more flexibility where I can meet with them one-on-one and interview them. And I mean, we can do that in person too, but it's a lot more flexible in terms of scheduling. I find it that way. Also, a lot of activities where they may need a little extra time to process things and they're doing it individually, they benefit from online as well. And even if they're just working in small groups and they're working in the breakout rooms, it feels like it's a little bit more private than being in class. And a lot of the asynchronous activities, then they have more time to sort of prepare themselves and participate when they're ready, so to speak. So I think that actually the online format is better for the shy students.
So I would, yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself for some reason. I see a couple of questions about tools, and I know folks were interested in hearing about the tools that Noah mentioned. So what I would say is my attitude towards tools has shifted quite a bit since, I've been trying to focus on what tools faculty are already fairly familiar with and students, and not try to introduce too many new tools. Just thinking about it from the student's perspective, for example, imagine if each instructor is using a completely different set of tools with a completely different set of expectations on how to use those tools. What I've been encouraging faculty to do is to really get into a groove with 2 or 3 tools. If you're going to be introducing new tools, to not overdo it, because the students are managing a lot these days. If they're taking, let's say, 5 classes and trying to understand when things are due from different faculty members and in what format and which tool, I think that can be quite overwhelming for some of them. So, I've been saying, it maybe not use VoiceThread. Maybe you should just use your institutionally supported video creation software. We use Penupto, or some might use Camtasia. In using Sakai, there's a built-in audio recording tool, so you can have students do a discussion forum and then post via audio, to really try to utilize and think about the things that are already institutionally supported. We have, for example, Microsoft 365 suite supported by our institution. So instead of using Spark, I might use Sway, Microsoft Sway, for example, which allows you to do a lot of, if you looked at the cookbook link I sent out, that was created fairly easily with Sway. So students could create kind of a digital portfolio or some kind of electronic digital storytelling activity using Microsoft 365. Another powerful tool that I think is underutilized is OneNote. OneNote allows you to add audio and video and easily provide feedback in multiple formats. So, so try to revisit, if I were going to give any advice on tools, try to revisit those tools that that are institutionally supported, and kind of look at and rethink how you might use them. Just so it'll also help lift all boats, I think, where if we become more familiar, since many of us are the technology experts, if we become more familiar with the tools that are institutionally supported, we can help more people rather than going rogue. And using a lot of other tools that are out there. So OneNote is not necessarily free, but it's built into Microsoft 365. So you might have a Google Google platform, in your institution. We're one. Mostly a Microsoft institution, and we use Sakai as our course managing platform, and Panopto for video. So, and really it's about the approach. I think Noah's example of creating a presence is very important. So trying to use a lot of video, try to record yourself. Even for creating the hybrid with a twist of lemon, I did an introductory video of me in my kitchen wearing a full suit, as a joke, kind of introducing, this is my kitchen. We're all trying to cook in this new environment. Having your presence there via video is the most important thing, whether you're using Panopto or VoiceThread or whatever tool you're using.
I agree. I agree with that. I think a lot of the tools replicate things that we have already, and that sometimes we're not aware of that. Sometimes, yes, it is a little bit more convenient. Like we use Kaltura, and sometimes Kaltura takes forever to load one video. So I understand the appeal of how easy it is to do videos on Flipgrid, for example. But you just have to go with whatever you're comfortable and what you're using it for, right? So if the students are going to be posting a lot of videos responding to many people in one forum, I can tell you right now, Moodle is going to have problems loading, right? So you have to just think ahead and then think that sometimes, another tool might help you a little better. That's true. But don't feel like you have to be, that just teaching online means I have to learn all new tools. That's not necessarily the case, right? Maybe all you need is just your LMAs and Zoom, and you can have a great class just with that. So don't think about more tools make you a better teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll chime in here with like the simplicity is best. Everybody's already really stressed out and really busy, really distracted. If you can maintain your presence and address your learning objectives with the tools that you already have on hand, with the stuff that you're familiar with and your students are already familiar with, do that. Even if it just seems like, well, there might be a better thing out there. The better thing is a thing that you feel good about and your students feel comfortable with. That effective dimension is going to make a great deal more difference than the new widgets that you could possibly get with a new application.
Thanks. Florencia, could we move to the next slide so that we can get to a few others, and maybe whoever wants to choose one from here could answer one of these?
I can tackle the asynchronous versus synchronous question, because or something close to it. We're finding, or at least I'm finding, a push and pull between the research out there that pushes us a lot towards asynchronous as being more effective in many cases, and mostly parents and a lot of administrators, because of pressure from parents, wanting more synchronous time in those online interactions. That I think a lot of K through 12 experiences were Zoom heavy, that you just sit in front of Zoom and we learn. And there are a lot of parents who are equating that seat time with value for the money that they're spending. And so I've been getting pressure from from administrators, mostly because they've been getting pressure from parents to include more Zoom-like sessions. And so it's been taking a lot of education of how, I have been telling faculty, use the synchronous like you would use salt to use the food metaphor again, that, it does add some flavor, but too much is gonna spoil the dish. So, I think targeted, short, synchronous interactions can be very effective. If it's too heavily on the synchronous, students will turn off their cameras and tune out. The research on video lectures is 10 minutes or less. Everything that I see is anything over 10 minutes is a waste. You might as well not say a thing after 10 minutes, and really closer to 6 is ideal. I would recommend pushing a lot, as Noah kind of pointed out, toward video, having your presence in short micro lectures, 6 minutes, and using that synchronous time for practice, right? Very targeted practice, or for answering questions or clarifying any kind of confusion that students might have. If I could give a shout out, if you see in the cookbook, to Michael Welsh from Kansas State, who does, if you look at his series on YouTube, I can put the link. His video series has been very influential in terms of, for me, on how to create good, effective videos in class. I'll put a link to his channel in the YouTube in the chat room.
Thank you.
can-
Florencia, could you go to Hyflex and see if somebody has, we just have only a few minutes
Oh,
left.
I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the clock.
Yeah, we only have a few minutes left. So we have a Hyflex and then face-to-face. So maybe we can have one question from Hyflex and one from face-to-face. And then we'll move to discussion room since we're almost at 4 o'clock. Maybe Noah, would you?
Yeah, I was about to say, I'd love to jump in this very first one, how to make sure to engage and build a social connection with remote students. This is actually facilitated by the fact that so many of our students are just even beyond digital natives, like they're digital embryos. They live in not just a socialness, but they live in a socialness that's mediated by digital technology. Like they are accustomed to talking with their friends and exchanging information with each other via their phones and their computers. So creating a social connection for me, creating community within a classroom is kind of a two-part thing. One, it always starts with a kind of authenticity, an authenticity of text and an authenticity of task. When the students see that this is a real world applicable thing you're asking them to do or to look at, they give it a great deal more effort and credence than like, okay, here's your textbook's, version of this. Even if it seems really kind of like daunting for them at a certain level, if you can help them break it down, and if you can give them a kind of activity that's related to it at very least, they kind of step up. This has been my experience. Additionally, if you set up interactions between them that are largely asynchronous, and I love Kevin's idea of synchronous SALT, like, and has the possibility of some simple, light, synchronous interactions, they'll also put more into it. So long as you kind of model and set expectations of, I want to see full, complete sentences and multimedia in this discussion post, and I want to make sure you're posing questions to each other and answering those questions, they'll do it. But you have to kind of set that very explicit expectation. You have to do it yourself first. After that, it kind of becomes the common routine for the class, where they post their creations, they share their ideas about it, and especially if you can engage them in the things that they're really interested in the memes, in the platforms, and some sort of TikTok. And this will continue to evolve. So I say TikTok, and in 2 years, that's going to be obsolete. But the kind of thing that you see that they're engaging with, use that. All of those platforms have their different idiosyncrasies, but it's also something that makes them feel comfortable and makes them feel engaged, and is in and of itself a kind of authentic interaction for them.
Thanks. Could we move to the very last, well, it's the second to last slide, face-to-face. We have some people are teaching face-to-face, and this is a difficult situation, social distancing, and I think many of us have never encountered this. So we're going to be doing some trial and error this fall, I think. But does anyone have any suggestions for some of these questions? And just before somebody volunteers to answer, since it's at 4 o'clock, I just want to let everyone know when our next webinar is, because I think this will be relevant for many people. It's on August 13th, and the topic is online translators. How do we deal with the elephant in the virtual classroom? And so if you're interested in that, please do register. And also some of people want some more details on certain things, and I would definitely also recommend checking out the FLT mag. On the very first page of it that you can see when you go to the home page, there's a specific article that has links to a whole bunch of other articles that are relevant for teaching online and in this situation. So please do check those out. So one more answer to one more question, maybe from our face-to-face list, and then whoever is interested, stay, and we will put you in discussion groups if you would like to continue this discussion. I will be happy to stay later for that.